Live. I got 10 on.
You have 10. Okay, I was looking at that clock.
Everybody ready?
And that clock's right.
Let's stand for a moment of silence and pledge of allegiance. And now the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning. I'd like to call our meeting to order. We begin with the approval of the minutes, September 13, 2022. I believe everybody was here. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
The first and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Next, Commissioners' reports. Vice President Baker.
Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, citizens. Good to see everybody here. I'd just like to ask, I guess, John, I'd like to see a breakout of the retirees' health care cost based on, I guess it's years, when they retire, age, and then the percentage breakdown, 80-20, 90-10. If there was a sheet on that, I'd like to look at that.
Yeah, the general cost that we have relating to that.
Yes.
Okay.
Related to years of service, retirement age, however that works, however they, whatever they have that they could provide.
All right, I can work with staff to.
Anybody, we could also add the number of people in the drop program and prospective retirement dates for those.
We have that. We have that information. I'm looking back. There's Deb's shaking her head. So
oh,
yes.
there they are. I was looking over there and you're
so
there.
Deb's here and Kelsey's over there. So Kelsey's listening too. You're writing down, right? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll gather that information.
Commissioner Baker, anything else?
That's it. Thank you.
Commissioner Kiefer?
Yes, I have a couple things. Earlier this morning, I had an opportunity to have a one-on-one breakfast meeting with our new superintendent of schools, Dr. Savine. We talked about a variety of things, and I asked his permission to share just the highlights of those topics we discussed, and he was open to that. We talked about CIP budget requests for the school moving forward in the years ahead. We talked about the importance of keeping our community schools open, and he shared that it was his desire to also see Hancock and Cascade Elementary Schools stay open, and we talked about things that we could do to improve those schools. We talked about how drugs are impacting students and their families and that impact it has on the school system. We talked about the great tech high school programs that we have, how we have many more students who want to participate in those programs than capacity to take those students in, and how right now we have a great economic opportunity to expand those career types because we need those career fields right now in today's economy. We also talked about a future idea for our boards to meet to discuss some things and meet on a more regular basis, and perhaps COVID really stymied that over the last couple years, but we need to get back in the swing of meeting with our Board of Ed on a more regular basis. So was also happy to report that a comment that I bring up from time to time is how we allocated some savings from the construction of the Sharpsburg Elementary School to those two schools that the Board of Ed shared with us needed some improvements, to Hancock Elementary and Cascade Elementary. And he said that the design phase is in the works right now for a roof at Hancock Elementary and a large tank that needs to be custom designed. And I can't for the life of me remember exactly what the purpose of that tank was, but a tank at Cascade Elementary School. Also wanted to share that I know there was a request that came before the county, our Veterans Advisory Committee, about using our county logo. I know our Washington County Historical Advisory Committee, that's the committee I serve on, they use our county logo. And I'd like to see if we can grant permission for our county boards to use our county logo somehow in the design of their logo. And I think it would go a long way. In particular, it would legitimize that organization. And the Veterans Advisory Council helps provide or links people to services that are in our community, veterans, of course. But it would help provide those citizens as veterans to know that this is a legitimate organization offering sound advice And if our logo was present and people could see that, not just for this organization, but others, they know that this is an organization that speaks on our behalf and advises us. So it just, I think would help to legitimize that organization. So I'd like to see that going forward.
How soon?
How soon do you want?
Well, I'm just, you might.
Well,
No,
first let me ask a question. They've already decided on a logo. Now do they want to change it back to that? Is that what they're doing?
I don't know if they want to change it, and this could be for any organization, that if they use our county logo, it does help to legitimize that organization, that they are in fact part of our county government, just like a division within county government.
I guess my question was, and you don't have to give me an answer today, but I'd like to know why we can't share that logo. You know, if there's reasons why, and I don't know.
I don't have a problem myself with that, what you just proposed, no problem at all. On committees associated with our county, I think there has to be a stopping point who can use the logo. I don't know if that's even legal or illegal. I have no idea. But with what you're saying, I'm total agreement with it. Doesn't matter to me as long as they're associated with the county.
Yeah, from the back, I thought they'd already decided and moved on, but if they want to change it, that's okay with me. I mean, so,
Okay.
all right.
Mission to them.
A few other items here. You know, a lot has been said about our county surplus. 35 million is substantial. I'd like to see if staff can report back to us the mechanics of how, I know it's been several years, but I know it was done in the past where a refund was given to taxpayers. The mechanics of how that would work, whether we go down that path or not, that's for the full board to decide. But I would like to know the process of how that works, how we might calculate an amount, what that might be, and just the cost it would be for us. But one of the best pieces of advice and one of the worst pieces of advice I've ever received is how to be a commissioner is treat the county government like you would a business. A business exists to generate profit. County government, no government entity exists to create a profit. So I'd like to check into that if we could. And as far as grant funding for nonprofit organizations, I would like to see us discuss soon. I was hoping it might be on our agenda today, and that's fine. I know we have other pressing matters as well. But discuss a meeting to find a way forward of granting money to nonprofits. I think we're all committed to doing so. But I don't like how organizations that have had long-standing requests before our board are being villainized. I don't like how we funded a $250,000 request with no bids or estimates for that cost in a 3-minute presentation. I think we need to do a little better with that. I think we all agree. But I think we need to set some guardrails in terms of how the maximum amount of funding that we might give any one organization. Personally, I think people impact, how can we spread that money among different nonprofit sectors and help as many different people with as many different needs as they may have. And I also like to make sure that we have dispersion throughout Washington County. Every Washington County citizen paid those taxes. And as we look at nonprofits, I'd like to see those nonprofits spread throughout Washington County. That's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Burkett?
Good morning, Washington County. I attended the Remembrance in the Park last Tuesday. Thank you to all who participated and organized that special time of remembrance. Thank you to all who were involved in the United Way's Day of Caring. It was a successful outreach to our community. And yesterday, I finally got to meet our new school superintendent. Although I won't be around after December here in office, it was nice to get to know him and learn a little bit about him. And I think the Board of Education made a good choice in selecting Dr. Savine. As you know, we've probably received 20 requests, maybe plus, for funds from different nonprofit agencies. And I was going to ask Krista today, but she's not here. Well-deserved time off. But if we can get a list created, we've been getting multiple emails. It'd be nice to have those all put into a list with the amount that they're requesting so that we can see them all in one location. And then I sent an email to Kelsey, And it does look like we're going to end up with even more of a surplus than what we had, and I would like to see us maybe add another 1 to 2 million to that total that we initially set aside, that 3 million, which would be a total of 4 to 5 million. Still under, still about 10% of our surplus that we had this year. And then I agree with a comment John made last week. The commissioners are the ones who set these funds aside to place additional workload on county employees. I don't think would be fair to them, and so I think it should be something that we as commissioners set the standard for, and maybe work out distributing that money then. Just my thought. So can we please set an agenda item for our next meeting to discuss some guidelines so that we can start setting some of those funds aside. Some of these people that are making requests there's a time, they're time sensitive, and so it'd be nice to get this in the hands of those agencies as soon as possible. And then my final comment that I want to bring up today is I'd like to see us amend our Washington County zoning code highway interchange section 19.9 additional design standards, amend that to read and I think that this would help clean up some safety concerns, but it would read the vehicular entrance to any use that generates more than 25 vehicular trips in a single hour must be located more than 1,000 feet from an at-grade railroad crossing over a state road and must be located more than 1,000 feet from any intersection of 2 state highways. I'd like to see us implement this on that code, and I don't know if we have to bring this back for public hearing, but I think that would kind of clean up that code a little bit and provide a little more safety at interchanges in our county. So I don't, is Jill here today?
No, she's not.
So,
I mean, I'll just say generally, and Kirk can weigh in on this, but I mean, it would have to go through the regular process. So if this board is looking to make that change, I would suggest that we have further discussion on what that change would be. I mean, I know you have some language there, but I don't know if the other commissioners have seen or heard that. But if the commissioners are going to suggest that change, then the board would have to, I guess, suggest to staff that this is the change I'd like to see, and then we'd have to go through the normal process, right, Kirk?
That's right. Yeah, it'd have to go, the board would have to be the applicant for the text amendment. It would have to go through the planning commission for them to make a recommendation, and it would have to be the subject of a public hearing, and then this board could act on it.
so if there's support from at least a couple other commissioners or all commissioners, I think that it'd be nice to get this process started today then.
What was that suggestion again? How far from, you said 1,000 feet from?
The vehicular entrance to any use that generates more than 25 vehicular trips in a single hour must be located more than 1,000 feet from an at-grade railroad crossing over a state road and must be located more than 1,000 feet from any intersection of 2 state highways.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed to digging into anything. I mean, you're gonna, it's gonna be quite a journey from a engineering point of view with state highways. We'll probably have to get involved, and it's gonna be, would you agree, Kirk? It's gonna be a whole lot of steps, right? But I'm not opposed to,
I'm opposed to looking at it.
looking at it, no, but
Yeah, but respectfully, if you're going down this path, I would suggest that you at least schedule this as an agenda item and ask staff to look at it and provide you with any
yeah, I would like to hear that, because there's gonna be a lot of
because we don't know.
explanations.
I mean, just on the first
Can we
blush,
have this
don't
as an
know.
agenda item for
Yeah.
next week then?
Can we get that on for next week or soon?
If you can provide that information to us, we can, I can provide it to staff, and we can have a discussion next week about it.
All right. That's all for me today.
Thank you. Commissioner Wagner?
That would be
Morning.
on the agenda next week?
Yes.
I agreed with pretty much everything Commissioner Kiefer said on, and I did have a meeting with Dr. Zavine, and I was really pleased at that meeting. I think he's really pro technical skills too, which I think means a lot with, tech high schools and things like that. And he was, same comments Commissioner Kiefer said, he was pretty pro, he was just good. It was a good meeting. Good conversation, got to know each other a little bit. And also agree that, I said it last week, that I would encourage staff sooner than later to have some kind of a process to distribute surplus and see how much we really need. Just about every nonprofit needs money. I'm sure they're all going to present that as needing money, but for the sake of us doing our due diligence to see more transparency, see what their budget is, why exactly they need it, how much do they need, what will that accomplish? I really think that's a responsible thing to do, and so I do agree with that. Let's put a little bit more effort into seeing exactly where that money for all those requests are really going to be used for. Now, obviously, last week we had people operating on borrowed money, which is not always a great thing to do, and we had people that needed to feed people. So, but with how many nonprofits, I don't even have any idea. There's a couple hundred, I guess, easy, right?
Yeah.
That they're all going to have needs, but how critical and how much reoccurring expense will those needs cost? It's next year, we might be saying we need that money again because we just created 2 employees and a truck or a vehicle. So I'd just like to have more details. So I do agree, Commissioner Kiefer, on what you said there. Do we have that
Yeah,
comment?
I was just going to say, obviously, that's what we're talking about, and that's what I talked about last week, about creating some sort of a process so everybody understands, what they need to do and who can apply and what the criteria is. And I appreciate Commissioner Burkett's comments that, I've talked to staff, and, we have a number of different programs going on right now, so, but obviously, staff can be of assistance to that. I would suggest that you place it on the agenda for discussion, for some ideas from the commissioners as to what kind of criteria. Sure, we can do that next week if you want to do that next week, and at least some discussion. You can have staff here. There's opportunities to, set up an application process, set up some criteria, maybe some limits on how much funding you would give to each organization, and also there's some existing programs that we have now that you could add additional funds to, where we already have a process in place. So those are things that I think we should all talk about as to how you're going to distribute the remaining funds. So if you want to place that on the agenda for next week, we can have that. We can start that discussion next week, and I can have staff here. But like I said, if the process comes to the commissioner or to the staff, and we create a process where staff has to intake applications and review all that, it's not going to be a quick process because they're stretched pretty thin with projects. Susan Buchanan's office, I don't know if she's listening right now or not, but obviously they're just rolling out the program that she explained to you last week.
It was the ARPA program.
Right. So, and then community organizational funding is going to be coming up soon, and so all those things are in place now. So, I think a process is definitely the way we should go. Either that or put money in existing programs, but it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen overnight. But we can start having that discussion next week, and I would appreciate any thoughts that the commissioners had about what that criteria would be.
You might even, thinking out loud, if they were willing to do it, you might incorporate some input from the COF to let them help analyze we make the ultimate decision, but make them help analyze the legwork.
Yeah, that's what
They're willing to do that.
If they're willing to do that, and that's a conversation we can have with them about. But any existing process, an existing group that's used to looking at these kind of applications would be helpful to us.
Right. All right. Thank you. Big night tonight, ribbon cutting on the training center, 6 o'clock or 5?
It's 5 to 8. The program's at 6. The ribbon cutting is at 6:30.
So anybody can be there.
Come down.
It's a wonderful facility. It's finally happened. So it's very exciting. Yesterday, F&M Trust, they have 20-some branches. They located in Maryland. The first branch would be right across the street where there was an F&M, and originally a Hagerstown Trust, dates back into the early 1800s. So that was a grand opening for that yesterday evening. And I also attended Remembrance in the Park, a very solemn ceremony. I appreciate the people who, and the staff who planned that, and the city, using the city park. That's all I have.
Thank you. My report, just a reminder to staff and everybody, there's a committee called the George Edwards 50. That's the $50 million that was awarded Western Maryland through the legislature to honor George Edwards. It's 20 million, 10 million, 10 million, 10 million over the next 4 years. And we have been in 3 meetings on how to do the process, like we're talking right now, how to fairly get an application, award the process. But once that is determined, our staff then will be also tasked with awarding and accepting applications for projects in Washington County. Also, we have the ARPA program, which our staff is tied down with. And then just recently, we approved that Tri-County Council, I believe it was the Rural Legacy funding, in which we had a list of 30 names that we moved forward. So it will be helpful if we do assign staff and get a process organized so we can maximize our efforts and get that money fairly and equally distributed. But it is going to put a lot of work on staff, so we need to figure out how to do that. I did attend the Remembrance in the Park. It was back there, I think, the year before. We had it out at the airport. It was a very solemn ceremony. Thank you to Tom Brown and all those who were involved in that. I did also meet with Dr. Savine a few weeks ago, and similar topics were discussed. Very easygoing gentleman to talk to. I felt at ease with him, so very confident he'll do a superb job. Also, I want to thank United Way for their Day of Caring program. They had over 900 some volunteers going out to numerous locations. Washington County had over 40 employees out helping that day as well. And just then a final reminder about the Public Safety Training Center. We're not finished down there yet with improving it, but invite all to be there this evening. That concludes my report. We will now move to staff comments. Andrew Eichmann, Debbie Kondo, whoever's first. Please state your name and the subject.
Andrew Eshelman, Director of Public Works.
Commissioners, we would like to request approval of hiring Neil Dord for the airport position of Washington County Regional Airport. This is a grade 18, step 10 position at $196,660.
Motion to approve.
Second.
First and second, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Staff reports, Mr. Downey,
Nothing this morning.
Michelle.
The Ethics Commission is requesting you accept the recommendation to appoint Michael Morrell to serve a first 5-year term, September 1st, 2022 through August 31st, 2027, and also Kevin Smoot to serve a first 5-year term from September 1st, 2022 through August 31st, 2027, and this is not a paid board.
Motion to approve.
Or second?
Second.
First and second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Just for a note, there was an inquiry by the Diversity Board to add a commissioner, so is on that, so I'll let you handle that. Anything else?
I have one more. The Washington County Electrical Board of Examiners and Supervisors is requesting that you accept the recommendation to appoint Charles Schindel to serve a 14th 2-year term retroactively from June 1st, 2022 through July 31st, 2024 as a member designated by the Washington County Fire and Rescue Association. This is a paid board.
All in favor, everybody okay with that? Motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
First and second, any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Anything else, Michelle?
That's it.
County Administrator?
Thank you, President Klein. Good morning, Commissioners. I think everybody's covered everything that was on my list already, but I'm just going to go ahead. Obviously, the Public Safety Training Center tonight, so if you get an opportunity to come down and just tour the facility, it's a great facility. It'll be a great thing moving forward for Washington County. I did want to thank our county staff for helping out with the United Way Day of Caring. As we said, I think we had 34 to 40 employees. I know Andrew and Ashley were very They took a leadership effort in that, so I appreciate that. I've also had the opportunity to meet with Dr. Svine on an occasion, and we're actually going to meet on a monthly basis to talk about issues, so I think I'm meeting with him later this week, so that'll be good moving forward. You talked about, Commissioner Kiefer talked about joint meetings. Dr. Svine and I did talk about that, having joint meetings, try to have them on like I said, on a regular basis, and not just during the budget season, but during the other times when we can talk about other issues. So I think we're going to try to plan those moving forward. Obviously, you already mentioned it. I know Mr. Malot's in the audience, but I do have a copy of the email from the Diversion and Inclusion Committee, and I think I don't know if were you going to bring this up today? Okay, so I'll bring it up. We'll take it from there. So, they were looking for a commissioner liaison to that committee. I think Commissioner Kiefer was at one point, but I don't think there is a liaison right now. So I think the Division and Inclusion Committee was asking the board to consider placing a commissioner as a liaison to that committee.
Just to clarify, I had stepped down maybe 2 years ago. I had my work commitment changed, and I had to work on Monday evenings, and that's when that committee met, and the other members weren't able to meet.
Right.
And at that time, we couldn't get another commissioner to take that spot, I suppose because of other scheduling conflicts, but.
Okay, so it's,
It's not forgotten.
right, no, so that came in just last week. I just wanted to bring it up today. I just happened to see you in the audience, but that's,
I think what'll happen when a new board takes over in December, we all work together and sign boards to each other. So it may not happen to them, but you're on the forefront of our thoughts on that, okay?
right, so we'll make sure that's on the list. So as Commissioner Klein said, that, once the new board comes in, then there'll be assigning and liaisons to different committees, and we'll make sure that you're on that list, so a commissioner can get assigned to that. But I wanted you to know that we got your email and we wanted to bring it forward.
Thank you, John.
That's all I have today.
Okay, next up is citizens' participation. This is opportunity for citizens to comment about an issue or issues of county practices and interests. This is not an interactive dialogue or a question and answer session. It is solely time to hear citizens' comments. Please limit your remarks as close as 3 minutes or under as possible. We'll begin with the front row. Anybody for citizens' participation? Please come forward, sir, and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Wally McClure. My address is 21673 Leiter Street, Hagerstown, Maryland. I have two comments. The first one involves trying to contact some of you people through your phones. I find that nobody's answering the phone. There's a lot of messages. We'll get back to you as soon as possible. I'm lucky if I get a response back within a day or two. So I just think that's something you need to look at. My other concern, I was afraid I was going to come in here this morning and still hear nothing about this budget surplus, but I appreciate Wayne leading the way and Randy joining in a similar way. I feel that government should never be in the business of generating profits. Wayne, you touched that topic very, very, very nicely. Beyond your budgeted and requested amounts, I know it's a delicate balancing act, and you've actually done a very good job from everything that I've seen, those of you who over the years, all of you. But how you deal with this surplus is the challenge that I really see. The suggested giveaways that I saw in the newspaper I think are all credible, but I feel in doing so, in taking this money and just starting to shower the community and the county with this money is going to set you up for a precedent that next year you're going to see these, especially these nonprofits, come in with a request of even 50, 75% higher than they came in with this year, because they're going to know that, yeah, you're going to try to control the budget, but they're going to know that you have this ability to create a surplus way beyond what is actually needed. And I want to give you a little example here of what I think is going on. The figures are smaller, but the principles are the same. And that is if you had a mountain bike that you wanted to sell, so you post it on Facebook for $80. Your customer comes, meets you at your home or wherever you meet, and he hands you the money. But he's busy. He's checking out the brakes and squeezing the tires. And he gets on it, see if he fits. you're over here, 20, 40, 60. You wanted to sell it for $80. So you got 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. You got $20 more than you asked for. He didn't even know that. So the question is, are you going to give that money back? I would give the money back. I've sold a lot of things on Facebook. And when a customer comes to me and they hand me a wad of bills, I say right off the bat, let me count this so I don't get any more than I deserve. And right now you've got a surplus here that, that I think you need to return to the taxpayers. You talked about some precedents being established of how to work out when you have a large surplus. What I think you should consider doing is saying perhaps 3% of whatever your budgeted amount was for this year, say $250 million. So if you go with 3%, if you have an average of 3%, which would be $7.5 million, I don't think the taxpayers would have a problem with that. Saying, yeah, go ahead, guys, do whatever you want to do with it. But when you're looking at $35 million, I think it needs to be returned to the source. Yes, you have a lot of nonprofits that obviously can use this. They have insatiable appetites, as does the Board of Education. And I just feel that, like Maryland did several years ago, they gave us a refund. You can't do a credit because the source of this tax money is going to be gone for some of these people that funneled this money to you. Maybe they sell their properties, they move on, but it needs to be refunded. I disagree, Charles, with your comment about, well, it'd be too much money. I personally could care less if it costs $100,000 to get into your computers and compile a list and start printing checks and the postage required. $100,000 is nothing to start returning of maybe $25,000 if you kept 10,000, or excuse me, 10 million of this surplus to do whatever you want to do. But the bulk of this surplus needs to be returned.
I'm sorry,
Charlie.
but when did I make a comment like that?
Earlier, I inferred that you were talking about that it would be too much of a burden on the staff to return this.
As far as the appropriating that
Logistics.
10%, not the whole amount, but appropriating the amount to nonprofits. I'm sorry, go
Okay,
ahead.
well, maybe I misunderstood,
Gentlemen,
but
go
I
ahead.
took it
I'm
as,
sorry.
Thanks for trying to correct the record. I don't want, please continue,
okay.
Mr. McClure.
Okay, so let me just say regardless then that regardless of what it costs, most of this money should be returned. And so that's basically all that I have to say about that. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for keeping to the time frame. Thank you, sir. Continuing with citizens' participation, next row, please come forward.
Front row up there, Joe.
As I say, you got somebody in the
Oh,
front.
they're there. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed you with the glare. Come forward. State your names and your address for the record.
My name is Carol Brashears. My address is 115 Linden Avenue in Hagerstown. And I'm here to represent the Women's Club of Hagerstown. We are a nonprofit. We've heard about the situation, but before all that money became available, I was going to approach you about a situation that has just come to us. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with our organization. We are 101 years old.
Oh, okay.
Part of our building is 180 years old. The other part of our building is 98 years old. And what do we do in our community? We have been serving the community. We offer low-income housing for women of limited means. We've been doing this for 100 years. Many people don't know that. We have 14 rooms. We have some women who stay for just a few months until they can get their feet back on the ground. We have some that stay for many years. And we're very proud of that, and we think we are very unique, not only in this Washington County, but in the state of Maryland, that we offer this service to women. So why am I here? We have an auditorium that we use for our fundraising events so that we can keep the cost of this to the women at very low. Our average is about $260 a month. That's what we charge. So we do not charge a lot of money for the ladies to live there. It's clean, it's affordable, it's safe and secure housing, very up to date. It's wonderful. But our auditorium suffered a great structural problem. We were having new handicap doors placed last year, and our construction the analysis of the construction was our walls were bulging. So we had to have a structural engineer come in, Dan Matonic, piped out all the insulation, and it was much more severe than we ever anticipated. He said we cannot use the room. So it is going to require new walls being built, new roof being put on, new windows, new floor, new HVAC, everything we have to build from the inside out. Plus, we are a historical building, so we're making sure everything follows under the guidelines of the Historical Trust. This project will cost about $300,000. We have never, ever asked the county commissioners for any money. We have always done it, but this is a very dire need. But without this auditorium, we are not going to be able to hold our events, our fundraisers, and rent it to the public that we all have done for 100 years. And we did not anticipate this problem until we saw the bulging walls, but then we had to dig down and start it right away because we cannot use it. So I respectfully ask you to consider, when you get to the point where nonprofits are being delineated and looked at, I would respectfully ask you to view it, and if you want to come up to see what's happening, it's just up over the hill.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Continuing with citizens' participation, please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Good morning. Keith Fangio. I'm here representing Sanmar Family Community Services, South County in Greensboro, Maryland. We also have a satellite office located in the south end of Hagerstown. I'm here today, as many others are, talking about the nonprofit surplus and how we might take advantage of the funds to improve our programs. Over the past decade, we've transitioned as an organization away from a more predominant residential program to a more family and community service program. As a part of that work, we have some facilities that are assets that we want to reposition more towards mental health services. And so as we reposition those, there's one particular building on our campus in Boonesboro that needs some renovations. And so as we look at that building, I've provided you all paperwork of a local contractor that can come in and provide capital improvements. The cost to the organization will be closer to $300,000. We're only asking the county commissioners to support that at $145,000. This is a one-time capital expense. There will be no ongoing expenses asked of the county commissioners for this project. It's a cost-effective renovation with fairly frugal improvements in terms of the building, in terms of positioning it for use. And there's a blended funding strategy where we're going to receive funds from a variety of sources to help initiate the project. But the overall goal is to be able to have an asset there on our Boonesboro campus to be able to better serve the needs of the community that have critical needs in the mental health space. I have copies available if you don't have them yourself to review, and just want to thank you in advance.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. If you have copies, you can leave them here if you so desire.
Is that the same email you sent?
Yes.
All right.
Continuing with citizens' participation, please introduce yourself and your address, sir.
My name is Dave Williams, 11 West Water Street, Smithsburg. For transparency, I'm a candidate for county commissioner, and also my remarks today are related to education, so I want everybody to know that my wife is a member of the school board, but my remarks today are mine and mine alone. Before I get into those, just a quick note on your budget surplus. It might be nice for everybody to know exactly where that surplus came from, whether it's income tax, real estate tax, recordation fees, or anything else like that. If you're going to start looking about giving money back to people, it's nice to know where it came from in the first place. Now, my planned remarks are prompted by your discussion last week on potential legislative issues. Commissioner Kiefer's concern about schools in unique rural geographic settings is commendable, but when your discussion then focused on the closing of Hancock Middle High School, it became clear that you needed some help with facts. First, the committee that recommended the closure that you didn't know the name of is the Facilities and Enrollment Advisory Committee. It is not a committee mandated by the state, as was stated last week. It is a standing committee of the Washington County Board of Education made up of Washington County citizens. State law does set a process boards of education must follow when considering closing a school. The FEAC committee, although not required by law, is one part of the process our Board of Education uses as it complies with that state law. The committee does not meet every 5 years, as was stated last week. As a standing committee, it meets when charged by the Board of Education to give advice on possible school attendance boundary changes, changes that are often brought about by the building or consolidation of schools. In this case, it was charged with examining schools that were at 60% or lower capacity. Another inaccurate statement that can be cleared up at this time is the assertion or the implication that Commissioner Kiefer has made multiple times over the last year that the recommendation to close the two schools was based on the physical condition of the buildings. This is not accurate. The review was clearly directed at schools with declining enrollment, not poor physical condition. The recommendation to close was an effort to improve educational and extracurricular opportunities at those schools. But my concern today is with the discussion that followed about how to prevent the closing of schools. And when Mr. Baker suggested that, quote, we might want to figure out how do we not have that committee meet? And then he continued and said, maybe we just don't even want to have that committee to meet. Then the suggestion was made to pass legislation to that effect, to stop a committee from meeting. So instead of looking at the root causes of under-enrollment stemming from underpopulation in the rural areas Mr. Kiefer is rightly concerned about, instead of acknowledging the educational inequities and the financial impact on the entire school system of keeping under-enrolled schools open, and then offering to help offset those costs, or having legislation from the state to help offset those costs, the consensus of this board on how to keep rural schools open was to explore legislation to block a committee from meeting.
Commissioner Klein, I know this isn't an opportunity for some back and forth, but
Thank you for asking.
because my name was mentioned a few times, first of all, I did not say that I did not know the name of the committee that you referenced. In fact, I did watch some of the committee meetings that the FIOC had. They were only available online. One entire meeting was dedicated to the condition of those two schools, Hancock and Cascade. That's how the idea came about, that when we had capital surplus from the construction of Sharpsburg Elementary School, that money be divided between Cascade Elementary School and Hancock Elementary School because of the condition of those two schools. I actually requested after that meeting, when the condition of the schools was mentioned, to meet at if I could meet school board staff at those schools so I could see the condition of those schools myself. And I was actually denied an opportunity to look at those schools. School board member Peter Bickford quickly got that issue corrected. But when I heard that condition of the schools was one of the reasons, I proactively went out and asked to see those schools in the communities myself, and I was denied by the Board of Education staff. So many of the things that you said were inaccurate, and I just want the record to reflect that.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Kiefer. I'll continue with citizens' participation. Anybody next, please come forward, introduce yourself. And addresses, please.
Good morning, President Klein, commissioners, and staff. I'm Neil Becker, 10811 Winco Drive, Hagerstown, Maryland, and I'm joined today by two WCPS educators, Nita Rivera and Danielle Wantz. I have just a few comments to share, and I'm not going to be too wordy, but Commissioner Kiefer must have telepathically entered my notes, because one of the things I did want to discuss is the investment in Washington County Public Schools. There is a significant surplus in Washington County, and one of the things we can do is invest in public education. CTE is one of the things we can invest in. But I want to make a point that I'm not a Washington County native. I came here to Washington County in 1993 because I valued what I saw Washington County doing. I started teaching here. And since I started in 1993, how many middle schools have we built and opened? How many high schools have we built and opened? Barbara Ingram School for the Arts, one new high school. No new comprehensive middle schools in 30 years. no new comprehensive high schools in 30 years. We continue as a school system and a county to Band-Aid our facilities to keep them open, many at or above capacity, while this board and the boards subordinate to it approve new businesses and new homes, which means more people. More people means more students. More students in this current climate means crowded classrooms without the services those students deserve. We're entering a funding crisis to match a staffing crisis, and WCPS cannot sustain without significant economic investment from the Board of County Commissioners. I fully acknowledge that the largest piece is public education, HCC and WCPS. But we cannot sustain where we are now and at the levels of funding. There must be a significant increase to advance and give the students they deserve, and that economic investment, that CTE investment, because the Band-Aids we're putting on and a new roof here and a new roof there is a new roof on a building that should be replaced. That new HVAC or new lighting is in a building that should be replaced. I ask this board to seriously consider land acquisition for new schools in Washington County, because without that land acquisition for schools, it could end up being another new warehouse that will be built with a for lease sign on it, because it's going to be built without occupants prepared for it. Thank you.
I'll go next.
Hello, this is my first time ever attending one of these, and I'm actually pretty impressed by some of the things that were said, and I'm more so all the meetings you've had with Dr. Selvine. I'm glad that you guys are meeting with him. I personally want to sit down and meet with him as well. I've been an educator for 17 years. I graduated from Boonesboro High School. So, you know, I've lived here all my life, and it just makes me really sad every year when the budget hearing comes that our schools aren't being funded fully. We deserve it. The kids deserve it. The teachers deserve it. So fund our schools, please. And if you are willing or able to come out to Rockland Woods Elementary, that's where I teach. I teach the gifted and talented educators. I am board certified, and I just welcome you to my school. You can see any grade level that you would like, any subject that you would like. We welcome you. So please come so you can see what our amazing teachers are doing, and you can value our educators, and we can see that.
I wanted to share my story. I came to Washington County from Puerto Rico 13 years ago. When I came here, I visited Washington County for 4 days, and I had the opportunity to visit the School of Arts, Barbara Ingram, and North High at the time. I fell in love with both schools and wanted my children to come to Washington County, and I wanted to become an educator here, and my dream was fulfilled. I just became a newly appointed member of the Commission for Women, and I have seen throughout these 13 years the growth in the diversity within our county. And as an educator, I know that we need funding to be able to support the growth in the diversity within our students. So as an advocate for diversity and for women, I again want to reiterate what my colleagues have said about funding our budget in schools.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Continuing with citizens' participation, is there anyone else? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item. Update from Fort Ritchie Revival. Please, Susan, please come forward, introduce your guests as they join you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Susan Grimes, Director of the Department of Business Development, and with me I have John Grumpetich and Landon Grove. I'll let them tell you about their positions with Fort Ritchie. Just to give a quick brief report, we're here to talk about a little bit of an update from John. Since purchasing the property in 2019, Mr. Krumpetich, owner and conservator of the Fort Ritchie base, has been energetically redeveloping the historic property. Mr. Krumpetich would like to highlight some of the successes of the community events and the economic growth of the once vacated property. The presentation will also entail the fort's overlay of our new foreign trade zone, its increasing ability to be a major economic driver in Western Maryland. And Mr. Krumpetich would also like to showcase the historic preservation efforts Tourism to Washington County created by the Camp Ritchie Museum, which is a 501c3. And lastly, some of the information about the major television production future endeavors and goals will also be shared. So with that, I am going to turn it over to John.
Morning, everyone. Morning. Nice to see you. I'm going to ask for funding, as everybody else did right away. I'm just kidding. I mean, we're excited to be here. Progress at Fort Ritchie, is a place that really kind of sat dormant for a long time, had some sporadic use, but really now is starting to turn the corner. I'll kind of go through some of these a little bit. But the biggest thing that we've tried to do is not only get residents back, but also be able to utilize some of the buildings that were what you would call usable there on the property. And we have had a ton of success in doing so. So the really interesting point I'd like to make about the schools, is very open and honest about what was going on with the closure of Cascade or the possible closure of Cascade. At that time, there was 120 students in Cascade, and now the numbers are 141. So in a little teeny school like Cascade, just some revitalization in our little mountain town is significant. It's also a town that historically had a surplus amount of inventory in houses. Houses were going for $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. A lot of them were run down. Susan has a wide history in this. Okay, you can't buy anything up there right now. I mean, the town itself has really changed, and there's a lot of engagement happening between the town residents and Fort Ritchie. So as opposed to something that seems like it was crumbling in the backyard, just to have the revitalization effort starting has gone so far just with the town coming back to life. Is this what we use to scroll to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless,
there we go. So this is something that's super exciting to me. Of course, I like the housing, but I'm a business guy, so this is really exciting. We just signed on with 2 more businesses, and by early spring of next year, we'll have 11 active businesses on the fort. I find that to be just over the moon. In a place where everybody said for so long, how are you going to get businesses up here? We're doing it. I mean, we are getting businesses up here. The last one that just signed on is going to be Fort Ritchie Tap Room, which is probably near and dearest to my heart. But really, really excited to just have a center where you're going to have historical exposure, which I'm going to let Landon touch on a little bit, but also a lot of commerce. As Susan alluded to, we engaged consultants to activate Washington County's foreign trade zone, because we are an FTZ site, but there are other sites in Washington County that are foreign trade zones. Really quick overlay of what that is just properties that have a designation so you can import goods, create value to those goods without paying tariffs on goods that are coming on the way in. Why that's valuable to us is, for example, we have JRJ Manufacturing who's moving in on the property, and they make HVAC equipment. You almost can't buy American contactors, you can't buy there's a lot of parts that you just cannot buy here in the United States that are made here. So our designation gives us the opportunity to have a value added to these businesses. We've worked closely with Susan, Linda Spence, and Jonathan Horowitz on working on this FTZ zone designation that we fully intend to utilize on the fort. Some of the businesses that are listing there, ours is Ritchie Revival, Cascade Properties. Lakeside Hall is taken back off. I mentioned JRJ and Harshman. Meritus Medical, we hope to have that facility open by the middle of October. Super exciting. It's going to be a primary care facility on the base. We still have, obviously, Fort Ritchie Community Center, which is the county's greenhouse cafe, our little ice cream shop that could, and now the tap room, as well as Ritchie Rejuvenation, which is going to be not just salon services, but also more in the way of personal health. So some really exciting things that are happening. Whistling Ridge, our 58 townhomes that I told you last year we were renovating, they are completed and they're full. we actually have a waiting list of 25 residents, which we did not see coming. We were confident that we were going to be able to fill these things, but it has gone far better than we even thought it was going to go. Something else I would like to touch on any of these projects, there is no handbook for revitalizing a military base. Okay, you're coming in and trying to work through the process of bringing this base to life. And there's people in this room, staff, that we have just built invaluable relationships with. Susan obviously is one of them. I probably bug her the most. But Andrew's sitting behind me, Jill Baker, Vicki Steinball. I mean, there's so many. John Klein from the county, Mark Bradshaw. These are just people that have to be with us all the time. And we're working together to bring this thing back to life. And I have to say, we have just had wonderful relationships with them. They've been helpful. I feel like fair, except for Andrew, because he's here. That's our relationship. But I feel like we have been able to do things in turning these buildings on that was always going to be difficult. There were no site plans for these buildings. There were no addresses for a lot of them. You've kind of almost got to start from scratch with a building that's sitting there falling away. And the county staff has helped us get through all of these processes so that we're able to turn these buildings back on. And this is just some of the buildings that these folks are moving into, which is super exciting. Lakeside Hall is back to its full glory, which is so exciting. Little Mountaintop Ice Cream Shop. Whistling Ridge, as I said, we're full. I couldn't have enough of those units. And I can't tell you how much it's helped with bringing 21719 back to life. Fort Ritchie Community Center. So one thing we did through Whistling Ridge, everybody that rents a home from us in Whistling Ridge automatically gets a Fort Ritchie Community Center membership that we pay to the community center. Okay, and one, we thought that was an enticing way to entice residents, but we're good friends with Buck Browning and the entire community center. I mean, this whole thing kind of started because of how deeply entrenched we were with the community center. It's just a little sluggish. Community events, which many of you have attended, have been fantastic. We worked with Leslie Hart here in the county to start the farmers market. Super exciting. Every single time, which becomes a little frustrating because we hear it, the food trucks run out of food at those events. It's wonderful. We have over 4,000 people for fireworks this year. So we was really cool about that. Landon had found some documents that when the Army was holding it, they had 2,500 people. So just to have, I mean, I don't always want to beat the Army, but it felt good. So to have just so many people interested in what's going on the property has been wonderful. There's Meritus Health, they're moving in, which is really exciting. I want Landon to tell one particular story that happened last week. We can't say it enough. Every day people walk into the office and are telling us stories about their fathers who were Ritchie boys, their mothers who were Japanese Nisei women. But I want Landon to tell you a story about a connection that happened just last week.
Yeah, good morning. We had a tour last week, and they had come all the way from California. We see people from all over the United States. I've given tours to people from Montana, Idaho, Louisiana, California. Furthest away, Austria. Someone came here just to see Fort Ritchie. British Columbia, someone was here. But this group last week, they were discussing that their father had served there, and they served in this small town called Anzio, which made me recall that 2 months ago, another individual had come to visit Fort Ritchie, and he claimed his father served in Anzio. So I pulled up a picture on my phone. I said, do these guys look familiar? And he froze. He said, that's my dad in the picture. I've never seen this picture before in my life. And they were staying in Washington, D.C. The person who visited lives in Washington, D.C. So through the connections at Fort Ritchie, they were able to meet and discuss things for the first time ever. So Ritchie is really a place where these families of veterans that are no longer with us can bond using the site with new information that the museum is able to provide. So it's a really special place for all sorts of people that have passed through this for the last 120 years since it was established as an ICE company and then Maryland National Guard post.
And that center section, I mean, Landon's done a great job. He's already giving bus tours, even with the limited amount of recreation and things that we have in the center. But the utilization of the lakes, the history museums, opening the tap room, the coffee shop, those things are just going to add to what Fort Ritchie is to be even more of a draw for Washington County. And that's really the goal. I mean, is to continue to make, to have the commerce, but also have it be a historical and recreational draw. And that's what our goal is, to responsibly develop Fort Ritchie. I'm struggling with this thing. There's this greenhouse. This is Ritchie Rejuvenation that just signed on, which is exciting. Foreign trade zone that we went over a little bit. We actually have created a website for that. We are negotiating with several companies to relocate to Fort Ritchie to utilize the FTZ zone. And Susan knows some of them come through her office. So it's been really, really exciting. This is kind of a cool little roadmap. I mean, Susan said, introduce who you are. I guess I'm the ringleader. But every day changes. You look at revitalized living space, that's what we wanted to do, we've done that. Utilize existing buildings. We're pretty much out of what you would call usable buildings. And now it's getting into the nitty gritty of the renovations of some of the larger structures that are decrepit. The roof is falling in, and you're wondering what you're gonna be able to do for that. Something has developed here recently that Susan mentioned. We have garnered a lot of interest from film companies, which is exciting. Who really want to use the site for a number of reasons. They have a lot of access to buildings, but also large grounds and things along those lines. So that's been super, super exciting. We're starting even more infrastructure. Last year we were in the process when we were in here of pulling that new sewer line for housing. We did that. We pulled that 1,200-foot sewer line, and now we're starting the sewer line behind the barracks to start tying in Barrack Row. So we'll be pulling cut sheets on that pretty soon, and we're interviewing contractors who are actually going to lay that sewer line right now. So that's super exciting. We talked about the foreign trade zone, and then just the history. I didn't realize, even living there, just how immense it was inside of those gates, and it truly is. I mean, that's it. Thank you very much. That's where we are, and that kind of gives you a roadmap to where we're going. But I thought it was valuable in discussing with Susan to get in here and kind of talk to everybody about where we were with the site and where we're hoping to go. And hearing about the schools this morning, I didn't plan on discussing that at all. But Wayne bringing it up and talking about, hey, this is why we work with those schools, I say it didn't take that much because we're doing it every day. But just a stroke of starting to revitalize a community, you bring people back. You bring those folks back, and Cascade, I think it's top, the amount of kids it can hold is about 200. So to be at 225, somewhere in there, to be at 140 already, 20 kids additional, there's gonna be more next year, because there's not gonna be any houses sitting idle up any longer. So thank you all.
John, is Whistling Ridge complete? Is that as much as you can build?
It's complete, yes.
You can't build any more? Yeah, so.
We are looking at more housing, absolutely. But Whistling Ridge as a whole, there's no more on our side for us to renovate.
Yeah, and museum land, and it's not totally complete, right?
No, we're waiting on the funding from the state. The DGS is issuing us a $400,000 grant for rehabilitation.
Right.
So we started the initial stages of that, and we've come a long way in that building. It's also being used for something else right now.
Hey, you forgot the movie, didn't you? Did you forget the movie?
I don't know how much I can say, Randy. But it's super exciting. So some of those buildings that we're working on have been politely bogarted from us.
Right. When I was up there last night, it is a special community. We were at that meet and greet, but you introduced me to Rick Harshman, who, and that's something that he was long established, I think 60s or 70s automotive.
Yes.
And he's relocated part with, you said 10 plus employees up to the base. That was pretty cool. And he's doing specialty work too.
He is, and his son is a dynamo, and his son does custom CNC work, just remarkable stuff. But JRJ's kind of a similar story. They're going to have 75 employees by the middle of next year. So for our little zone, and he's already hiring local Cascade, I call them Cascadians because that's what we are. But he's already hiring, they're already bringing those people in to work in their businesses. It's super exciting.
John, I would just say that as we've been talking about all this surplus, I heard a couple comments this morning about giving some money back to the people. I would just say the surplus isn't coming so much from being overtaxed. It's coming from people like you who are revitalizing areas. It's coming from the work of our business development people who are bringing companies in. We're hiring more people. This is where these surpluses are really coming from. And if I'm wrong, maybe Kelsey can let me know, but that's what's exciting for me. This isn't coming because we're overtaxing as much we are overtaxing. We voted on 3 tax cuts in the last year, which is exciting, and that we're able to give some of that money back that way. So good for you for what you're doing for our community. It's Washington
Well, we stole a
County as
business from
whole.
Pennsylvania too, so that feels good.
Okay, well, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, Sole Source Procurement Award, PUR-1582. Please come forward, introduce yourselves.
Morning, Rick Curry, Director of Purchasing. Joshua O'Neill, Division Director of Information Systems. Before you use the sole source procurement, PUR-1582, Munis Software Support. Recommended motion to authorize a sole source procurement of software support from Tyler Technologies of Dallas, Texas, for use of the Office of Budget and Finance and others in the amount of $237,334. The Purchase Department received a request from the Division of Information Systems regarding this procurement of software. The division wishes to use sections 1-106.2A, 1 and 2 of the Code of Public Laws of Washington County, Maryland. When the essentials section states that the procurement is authorized when only one source exists that meets the county's requirements, and the compatibility of equipment, accessories, and replacement of parts is a paramount consideration. As you can see in the RF, it tells what the system does do for the departments. This request requires approval of 4 or 5 commissioners in order to proceed with a sole source procurement. If approved, the following remaining steps of the process will occur as outlined by the law, not more than 10 days after execution and approval of the contract. Under this section, the procurement agency shall publish notice of award in newspaper of general circulation in the county, and an appropriate record of the sole source procurement shall be maintained as required. Funding is available in the division's budget, and you do see the price proposal from Taylor Technologies dated September 2nd, 2022. That concludes my recommendation for the award. Questions?
Commissioners?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Thank you.
That's 5. Thank you very much. Motion to go into closed session.
Motion to go into closed session.
Second.
First and second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you very much. Closed session we are.